The ever-constant wheel of rebalancing continues churning. How's it going, everybody? Force here, and today we're going to be talking about some upcoming changes to the game. In the past 24 hours, Overwatch's principal designer, Geoff Goodman, shed some insight on several planned balance changes currently in the works. They break down simply to a nerf for Zenyatta and potential buffs for Mei and Mercy. So let's take a look at each of these. Starting off with Zenyatta, who Geoff said, at this point we're looking likely to reduce some of his power in an upcoming patch, probably related to his Discord Orb. Now, as it stands, Discord Orb is instantly applied to an enemy and makes them take an additional 50% damage. Now, obviously 50% damage is great against anyone, but this has been found especially effective at dealing with tanks like Roadhog or Winston, or harder to hit heroes like Pharah, Genji, and Tracer. It just makes him quicker to die, 50% quicker to be exact. Now, the interesting thing about this ability though is that since it can be applied to anyone you have sight on, it's basically a 50% damage buff for your entire team, so long as you're coordinating who to attack. Now, this is mostly why he has had such a high pick rate. With his recent buffs making him more durable, he's sticking around long enough to have Discord up on enemies for most of the fight, giving his entire team that 50% buff. Now compare this to Mercy, who had her 50% damage buff for a single target nerfed because it was considered too strong, especially when coupled with heroes like Pharah or McCree. So 50% for one player versus 50% for an entire team. You see the problem here? It's surprising, honestly, that it's even lasted for this long. So my guess is that they'll probably do one of two things. Either reduce the debuff damage to say 30 or 40%, or add a cooldown to the ability so that you can't spam it from one enemy to the next. If I were to guess, it'll just be a percentage damage reduction. Now, this will make it so that Zenyatta's still in a good spot, but he'll be less of a must pick. And this could make room for Ana or possibly the return of Mercy. Now, speaking of Mercy, let's talk about her changes. Nothing definitive was said other than that they're looking at her, and there are some things we can do to help her out in the near future. Geoff specifically mentioned that the team toyed around with the idea of giving her a new ability. They internally tested some AoE heal, for example, but that didn't really work out. And what they're considering is giving her an ability that she could use more outside of combat, or something that is generally used much more rarely. Think maybe something similar to Symmetra's shield. It's an ability that she uses, but it's nothing that she's spamming constantly in combat. Again, nothing is set in stone, and they're just toying around with some ideas. Frankly though, I think it's probably going to be worth waiting to mess around with Mercy at all until after the Zenyatta changes happen, because Mercy might rise back into dominance. I mean, really, the only thing that was nerfed was her ultimate charge time. Prior to that, she was in that must-pick spot. She was picked in practically every single game, because Res is a great ability. So let's see what happens with Zenyatta, and maybe that second healer role gets refilled by Mercy. Who knows? And then finally, there is Mei. Of her, Geoff said, currently her ultimate can feel a bit unwieldy and inconsistent, especially when you compare it to similar ultimates like Reinhardt's. And of course, what he means by that is an ultimate that's like an area control, an area stun. He went on to say, we're internally testing allowing the ultimate projectile she throws to pierce barriers, such as Reinhardt's shield, and increasing the radius a bit on it. So piercing the shields would make it a bit more reliable, and of course that bigger radius would mean you're more likely to get people caught in it. Again, when you compare it to Reinhardt's ultimate that's just an area stun, it's really hard to avoid that if he lines you up. Whereas Mei's ultimate, she tosses it out and you have time to get the heck out of there. In fact, frankly, I don't even remember the last time I was frozen by Mei's ultimate. So these are the changes that Geoff has hinted at and talked about. It looks like for certain though, the Zenyatta Discord Orb nerf is happening, and Mei is definitely getting some sort of a tweak or rework. Whether or not Mercy is going to get any of those changes, I think it's still up to debate. And again, I don't think they really should touch her until they change Zenyatta, because we're in a two-healer meta. We've been in a two-healer meta for a long time when we're talking about the high-level play and professional play. And so we're always going to have two healers. Lucio has been and will continue to be one of those must-picks because he's just so helpful with his speed boost and his AoE heals, helping out in sustained fights, and his ultimates for engagements. I mean, there's a lot of great about Lucio, so I don't see him going away anytime soon unless they touch him. So then who's that second spot go to? For a while it was guaranteed Mercy. Nowadays it's been guaranteed Zenyatta, and that's just going to keep changing as these adjustments happen, because the players will pick what is considered the best at the moment. And I guess the final thing that I want to say is that all of these changes that are happening, whether it's the Widowmaker nerf, the changes to McCree that we saw, the changes to Zenyatta, and the changes to Mercy, all of the balance changes that have happened since the game launched, they've all all really revolved and been focused around the high level and professional levels of play. And the interesting thing about that is not really indicative of probably most of the player base. I continue to hear stories about people thinking that Mei is dominant, and I'm sitting here, either from my own play perspective or from watching tournaments, thinking I haven't seen Mei in a game in like a month and a half. It has been a long time. I literally cannot remember the last time I saw a Mei on my team or the enemy team. And I can't recall any tournaments that I've watched where she's been played either. It's been a long ass time. So it's just one of those things where the way people experience this game is drastically different depending on kind of where it's played. So if you're someone who's out there saying this is ridiculous, Mei's already overpowered and they're gonna buff her, for example, well, just realize that they're balancing for the higher level play and then kind of letting it trickle down to see what effects that it has. All right, everybody, that's gonna do it for me here today as we talk about some upcoming changes to the game. As always, I wanna know what you guys think about the video, about these changes, about the topic. Let me know in the comment section below. Yes, I do read the comments. Someone asked me that in the last video. I just don't reply to all of them because there's a lot of comments. Hope you all have a fantastic afternoon, and until next time, I'll see you later.